Rumors have been coming in that the Switch 2 has entered full production mode. It is very likely that right now, units are being manufactured, put together, stuffed into boxes, and put in a big, big pile in the corner with a big sign that says, "Do not leak." 5 exclamation points as we speak. Now, I know we had those leaked images of the console a while back, and it did seem to be that was, related to production in some way. I don't know if maybe that was still preliminary work or if they had begun full manufacturing at that point. I really don't know. The point is, it is very, very likely that right now, units are finally being manufactured. All signs point to that beginning by now, especially if Nintendo wants to launch this thing in the first half of 2025. So we have a new rumor about the inevitable launch. I will advise you to take this particular rumor with a pretty chunky, a chunk of salt. Honestly, I'm having a bit of a hard time understanding this rumor and like its source and why it's valid at all. I'm really don't understand it. There's something in here about a decoded message. I don't know. I'm not kidding. I don't know where this message came from. I don't get it, and I'm looking around, but everyone's reporting on it. So I guess it's not my job to understand, only to report. Point is, though, this rumor, this decoded message, I can only assume was from an intercepted carrier pigeon. It suggests that Nintendo is preparing for a very, very big launch for the Switch 2. It claims that Nintendo is going to be manufacturing and shipping roughly 2.5 times the number of units as they did with the original Switch at launch in 2017. 2.5 times, which would put their output in the ballpark of 6.5 to 7 million units. Now, yeah, the Switch sold a few million units at launch, and that was good, relatively standard. It's hard to produce a lot of units all at once. It's much easier to sell a system over the course of its entire life. It's just not easy to get that many consoles into trucks and into stores and onto shelves all at the same time and sell them all at the same time. The PS5 was like one of the fastest selling console launches ever, which is still confusing and depressing. And that was like a few million in the first few days. And that, it was the PS5. It was affected by the chip shortages and whatnot. It was like really hard for them to meet the demand. But they sold a few million, and that was considered really good, really, really fast. So we're looking at this number, let's say 7 million. That is a big number. And that is a really, really big increase for Nintendo. Because like when the Switch was launching, it's technically true that people were not like completely sure that it was going to be a big hit. Just coming off of the Wii U, everybody was still a little bit wary. And yet, there was hype. Like, there absolutely was. Going into the launch of the Switch, there was a demand. And Nintendo knew that. They knew they had something on their hands here. That's why the accessories were priced so high. It was so obvious. I mean, I know Nintendo was like hurting for revenue. They needed money really badly. But like when they announced that a dock would be $100 and a controller would be like 80, it was like, all right, they know they've got something. They know that we are going to buy these things. And we did. They were right. It was a really successful launch. And even then, only a couple million units. Just a couple million. And units were fairly scarce for a bit. It wasn't like a Wii situation. It wasn't like super duper impossible to find a Switch forever. I would say it was mainly around launch. I mean, like even in my town, you could find units. I don't know if there was ever a time when we had like none, so demand was outstripping the supply, maybe slightly, but all that kind of puts this 6.5 to 7 million number into perspective. Nintendo, if they are indeed planning on manufacturing that many units of the Switch 2 for launch, that is confidence. Right there. That is a humongous amount of confidence. Confidence of a very, very high level. Anywhere in the ballpark of 7 million. Day one. You know, that's Nintendo. They used to do the artificial scarcity thing. They did it with the Wii. I'm 100% convinced. They did it on purpose. They loved it. They loved the publicity. They loved the idea that they had this thing that was just, it was so hyped, and it was so demanded. Everyone was scrambling to get one, and they loved all the news articles. Just like, even 2 years after launch, nobody can find a Wii. Yeah, they loved it, but that was the old Nintendo. New Nintendo is smarter than that. And if this is true, then this is just even more evidence that they are completely aware of their number one biggest challenge going into a new hardware generation. It's a thing we talk about over and over again because it's true. Maintaining momentum. The Switch is so successful. How do you keep up that momentum? Well, I'll tell you, one really, really great way to do it is to ensure that on day one, anyone who wants to buy a Switch 2 can buy a Switch 2. Anyone. No fighting with scalpers, no fighting with other customers, no fighting to get a pre-order. If you want one, they want you to have one. And looking at this number and comparing it to, even PS5 or the original Switch or really any system, comparing it to those numbers, I mean, this could be huge. And of course, we don't know what the ultimate fate of the Switch 2, or whatever it will be called, will be. We don't know how good of a job they'll do of convincing people that they should make the jump. I honestly do think it's mostly just going to come down to the games at launch. And if the Switch 2 has a lot of features that just make it a better value proposition over the Switch 1, especially if there's any kind of upscaling, better performance mode for old games or something. If Nintendo can convince us that it's worth buying a Switch 2 and they can carry some of that momentum over, then it is very possible that this could be the biggest launch of any game console ever. It really could. If there are 7 million units on shelves and there are that many people who want to buy them, I don't know, maybe there'll be too many, Maybe it'll be like the Wii U. Not as bad, but there's enough. Anyone who wants one gets one. There are no shortages. You can just walk into the store anytime. You don't even need a pre-order. There's plenty. Maybe the supply this time will outweigh the demand. It's technically possible. But if they can keep that hype going, if they can roll the Switch users into the Switch 2 and everybody gets one and they sell through that 6.5, 7 million units in the first weekend or whatever, that's gonna be nuts. That's going to break some records right there. And more importantly, I would certainly call that a very successful launch for the Switch 2. There's a heck of a lot of pressure on the Switch 2 right now to repeat as much of the Switch's success as possible. Is it possible? We don't know if it's possible. I'm sure it'll be a good success, but to what degree? It's the big question right now. We just don't know how much of the Switch's success was just lightning in a bottle and how much of it was real organic customers who are going to keep coming back. We're not completely sure. But a launch like that would fill me with a heck of a lot of confidence. If they could sell 6 or 7 million units pretty much right out the gate, then yeah, I think the Switch 2 is gonna do just fine. And if it launches with some great games, I mean, especially if there's a 3D Mario right there on day one, 3D Mario, maybe a Breath of the Wild remaster or something, full backwards compatibility, maybe some other surprises thrown in there, then yeah, I think it will be a pretty darn good launch. I am currently recording in a room with a sleeping cat who is snoring. I'm going to point the mic that way. We'll see if we can pick some of this up. There you go. Could you hear that? I'm sure you could hear that bird in the background too. I'm house sitting for friends. So yeah, Switch 2 could be real big launch, could be great if this is all true. I don't know if it's true. I left my Little Orphan Annie secret decoder pen up in Seattle like a doofus. I should have known I might need it.